A look at people trying to change things for the better in Developing World.
The Impressionists would have found an endless source of inspiration here. Not the locals. To them, it's more a source of dread, the endless floods. Mok Hoa is a small town of 64,000 in the Mekong Delta, a mere 7 kilometers from the Cambodian border. Until recently, floods here were considered a natural part of the cycle of seasons. But things took a drastic turn for the worse in 2000. Flood levels reached record heights when the waters rose well over 3 meters, nearly a meter more than previous years. Damage to houses, schools, roads and bridges reached unprecedented proportions. But worse still, the waters claimed 500 lives, most of them children. The Mekong Basin hadn't seen such a disaster since 1961. The changes over the past 2 years have been dramatic. The floods come earlier, are higher and last longer. Instead of August to October, they now start in July and end in November.
Đây là một cái vấn đề rất là lớn, rất phức tạp.
It's a very complex problem. The forests are being cut down and not replanted quickly enough. That's why we've got this flooding. The water isn't being absorbed into the ground, so it stays on the surface and then pours down here. The people in the provinces and villages have raised the level of the roads and built flood protection to control the water. But this has had the effect of stopping the water from draining down to the sea, and it's made the overall water level here rise.
Nó bị chặn lại, nó không tràn đều ra biển. Nó chặn lại thì nó dâng làm cho mực nước cao lên cục bộ.
The Mekong Basin is the so-called rice bowl of the country. Half of all the rice in Vietnam is grown here. But today, the rich alluvial deposits brought by the floods are almost a thing of the past. The rice paddies are submerged by more than 2 meters of water. For the farmers, it is a disaster.
It's terrible, and it causes a lot of suffering. Some years we haven't harvested the rice at the end of the summer before the water rises. Last year, for instance, we had to go right into the water to gather enough rice to eat.
Trin Tup Phuong and her family live in Bao Mon, a small hamlet an hour away from Mok Hoa. They're rice farmers and bear the consequences of the floods on a daily basis. Not only has their income fallen dramatically, but the forced inactivity has also added to the tension. Since the floods started, they've been stranded in their house. Farming is out of the question, so all their energy goes into saving what's left of their possessions. They've moved all their belongings and supplies to a makeshift raised platform, the upper floor.
In fact, the waiting is very tedious. If only the water would drop quickly, so that we could get on with farming. But generally, when the flooding goes on like this, we just have to put up with it, because there is absolutely no answer. There's nothing else we can do. There's no other way round it.
The floods have been deadly over the past 2 years. In 2001, out of 300 victims, 260 were small children. Fast-rising waters, parents out in the fields, young children in the care of brothers or sisters, a moment of inattention and tragedy strikes. Children drown. The daughter and grandson of Trinta Phuong and Hun Van Chat have been sent to live in town because of this, and when they can occasionally visit, everyone's on constant alert. Faced with this disaster, the authorities are encouraging people to move to safer places. Little villages are springing up along roads or dikes. It's sometimes the only viable solution for these farmers. In the Mekong Delta, more than 200,000 households were destroyed by the floods and its consequences this year alone. With no way of warning people when floods were imminent, the impact of the waters coming down from Cambodia and Laos has been disastrous. Just a few days' warning makes all the difference, allowing people to take action to protect their possessions. A fast information network was essential for reducing the risks. So a disaster management office was set up in Hanoi by the United Nations Development Programme. Its role is to relay vital information from neighbouring countries and weather stations to the Delta provinces. In turn, the provinces keep regular track of the water levels in the Mekong. In October 2001, for example, the water level in Mok Hoa only went down by 57 centimetres. It's very slow for receding floods, but typical of the region. Coming on top of the torrential rain, the lingering flooding means that local people live in constant fear of further disaster.
The wind blows hard and the rain pours down. Sometimes we're in the middle of our meal and we have to stop eating for fear that we'll be carried away. That's why we don't even dare to eat. We wait till the storm's over before we go on. It's very difficult.
In spite of this, Trinta Phuong and Hun Van Chat don't wish to leave their home even temporarily. They're afraid that they will lose everything if they're not there to protect it. In fact, what they would like to do is to raise the foundations of their house to make it more resistant to floods. But the costs are much too high for them, the equivalent of $670 US. For the moment, the government and the international community can only help by providing emergency relief. Costly housing projects are beyond their means. But as long as deforestation goes on in neighbouring countries, the Mekong Delta will continue to be the victim. Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam will have to take drastic steps if the Mekong Basin is to continue to play its traditional role as the rice bowl of Vietnam. For the farmers, however, the issue is out of their hands. Their future is now, and the key to their problem lies in the murky waters surrounding them. The question they're asking themselves is, how long will they have to stand this never-ending season?